In the sea of November releases for the Nintendo Switch, one game that stood out as a game that I did not want to forget about is a game that released on other platforms in late spring, but once they said it was coming to the Nintendo Switch, I was like, you know what, I'll just wait for the Switch version. I got more than enough stuff to play right now, and I didn't expect a whole bunch of games to come out in November, but that game was RiME, and RiME was a game that really interested me. I really liked the art style. I really liked what I saw from the game, this sort of open adventure sort of thing, where you're just figuring out stuff for yourself. And RiME is coming out on the Nintendo Switch on November 14th digitally, physically on the 17th I believe it is, but I managed to get an early review copy of the game. So I've been playing RiME, checking it out, and seeing what it's all about. So what is RiME all about? Is it a simple Zelda clone? Is it a game all on its own that's really good? Or is it a Nintendo Switch fail? Let's talk about RiME, see what it brings to the table, and see what it's all about. So RiME starts out like any video game should start out, where you wake up and you're on a beach and you have no idea what the hell's going on. Literally, that's how the game starts. You're just on this beach, you wake up and you're like, hey, I'm a young boy, what am I doing? And that sort of sets the tone for the game, because the game doesn't just throw narrative at you and whatnot. There's no over-talking voice that's like, in the year 2021, a young boy is washed up on the sea. It's like, no, you are living the story. You are playing the role of this boy, and you are pretty much living vicariously through him, and you're trying to figure out, A, where you are, what you're doing, and what the hell's going on. And when you sort of come to your senses and start looking around the island, you quickly realize it's desolate. You are pretty isolated on this area, and you don't really know what's going on. You start to see sort of vegetation and different sorts of wildlife, and then you encounter your first friend, a little fox. Now, the fox is an interesting mechanic in the game, because what the fox essentially does is progress the story along. So if you're kind of confused on what to do next, you're not sure, where to go or whatnot, you just follow the fox and you can hear him yelping and whatnot. And it's pretty cool, honestly. It's a way to sort of keep the game streamlined if you want it that way. But I definitely encourage exploration in this game, because what the exploration does is it sort of fleshes out the backstory of this game and gives you more insight into what's going on. Because like I said, the game doesn't hold your hand in that aspect. The game doesn't tell you who you are, why you're there, and whatnot. That's for you, the player, to figure out yourself, and I appreciate that sort of storytelling. Now, after seeing the fox and, having him guide your path, you also see this red figure with a red shadowy figure with a red veil on, and you're like, who is this? Why are they watching me? Why can't I run up on them? What the hell is this? So I really like that about the game. There's enough intrigue, there's enough mystery that really keeps you wanting to keep going on and figuring out who this person is, why they're following you, and more importantly, who you are and why you're there. And that really is a main emphasis of the game. That's really a focal point of the game, is this sort of open storytelling. And, I appreciate that about the game. Now, like I said, you see that you're pretty barren and you're pretty alone on this island, but there is stuff like vegetation and animals and whatnot. So it feels lively enough, and it's definitely sort of a Breath of the Wild style, area. Like, Breath of the Wild had very barren areas, and that's how this is. There's not, towns and whatnot and stuff. It's just nature and, different sorts of structures and whatnot. And the main thing that you're doing in this game is solving puzzles. And the puzzles start out pretty easy and get progressively, more difficult. And a lot of them rely on, sun and whatnot, using the sun to your advantage and lining up things and activating, like little glow spheres and whatnot. It's really well done. I honestly felt that most of the puzzles, some of them were pretty hard, but it never felt like it was unfair or whatever. Like, once you figured it out, you're like, oh, that was pretty easy. And I never felt stuck or anything, and that was a good thing. I would just you have to sit down, you sort of have to focus on what you're doing and figure out what you're doing. And that's something I like in the game. There's no combat in the game. It's definitely more of a chilled, laid-back sort of experience, but there is that sort of incentive to just keep going and keep exploring and keep finding out, what's going on in this world and why you're there. And I think they really nailed it there. The atmosphere is excellent. The music and sound effects, excellent. The music is some of the best music that I've ever heard. It's very ambient, and it really just sort of, links you into this world, no pun intended. And there's even a thing where you can press a button and your character will start humming whatever song is going on. It's very interesting in how it's done. There's lots of platforming in the game too. You can really get creative with your platforming. If you see sort of, marks on a wall, that means you can access that area, and you could climb and, shimmy across and jump to other areas, and you end up getting on top of like these huge buildings and whatnot in order to solve these puzzles. And it really create some breathtaking scenes that just overlooking the lay of the land and overlooking all of the different structures and different terrain and different vegetation and different animals and whatnot. Really solid presentation. They really focused in on that. They really focused in on clever puzzle mechanics that feel really good, honestly. And I wanted to love RiME on the Nintendo Switch. I really wanted to love RiME, but there's one problem, and it's a big problem, and it's a problem that I don't understand why it necessarily still exists, especially considering the Nintendo Switch version is releasing much later than the other versions of the game. This is something that is easily noticeable and easily should have been fixed, but unfortunately it wasn't. I guess the first problem we have to talk about is handheld mode to begin with. So when I originally downloaded this game, I started playing it in handheld mode, and I noticed it's pretty fuzzy. It's definitely pretty blurry, and it's definitely not as crisp as a lot of other Nintendo Switch games in handheld mode, and that sort of detracts you from the experience. I know I was talking to my buddy Wood over at Beat 'em Ups, and I was like, dude, I just put it in dock mode. It looks so much better. Like, what's going on? There are a lot of Switch games that are sort of like that. Some are much more noticeable than others. I know Snake Pass was pretty blurry in handheld mode. It looked really good in dock mode, and RiME is in that same sort of thing. I don't know if it's an Unreal sort of thing or what exactly it is, because I believe both of these games ran on Unreal Engine 4, but it's just disappointing because that was one of the things that I really liked about the Switch version, was being able to take this game wherever I went. And the fact that it is blurry, it's definitely playable, but it's noticeably better on docked mode, and I really just get annoyed with things like that. I understand that when you're in dock mode, there's more power to be used, there's more resources to be used, but I just feel like if they could have cleaned it up a little bit and made it just a little bit sharper, because the textures are pretty much the same. They're a little bit fuzzied out and whatnot, a little bit blurrier, but if they would have just taken that and made that sharp, it would have been fine. And that's one of the biggest problems with the game. Another big problem with the game, unfortunately, is the performance. I'm not sure how we missed this. I'm not sure, how we didn't notice this, but it is very noticeable. And, there's little instances that it just sucks you out of the game. I was crossing over a bridge and the bridge started collapsing behind me, and there's different pillars to the bridge, and there was like 5 or 6 different pillars. I only saw 2 of them because the game hiccuped. And it just hiccuped, and it didn't happen. It was like loading and processing the areas as you go in. You see shadows pop up, you see textures pop up, and there's just lots of loading. There's lots of dropped animation frames. There's lots of just technical issues in this game. And in a game where you're supposed to be sucked into the environment, you're supposed to have a deep connection with the character and, just lose yourself in this world, it's a shame that this happens so often. And it's a shame that it really detracts from the game, because I think the core game itself is fantastic. I love the game's art style. I love the art style. It is so good. I love the music. It's so good. But it's just these technical issues that keep creeping up. And sometimes when you get to a different area and it saves a checkpoint, it just the frames per second just drops increasingly, and you could see it's stuttering along, and it's okay, why is it doing this? And honestly, it's something that can be remedied with a patch. They can easily patch this game and make the frame rate run a little bit better, make it run a little bit smoother. And I've checked out videos of other versions, the game running on the PS4, the Xbox One, the PC, just to make sure this wasn't a widespread issue. I looked at these certain instances that happened to me, and they did not happen in the other versions of the game. I know there was some trouble getting this game running on the Nintendo Switch for whatever reason, but honestly, it's just a shame, because I want to love this game. I think that there's a real, it does feel good compared to Breath of the Wild. I think fans of Breath of the Wild will really enjoy this game. There's no combat, but the puzzle solving is very unique and creative. And although it's not an open world game, the 4 areas that you traverse in do feel very open, if that makes any sense. So these technical limitations, if they can correct it with a patch, I think this game would be a solid pickup for Switch owners. But as it stands now, it's hard for me to recommend this game. If the Switch is your only gaming platform and you really want to play this game, I guess you could check it out, but honestly, all this makes me want to do is play it over on the PS4, where now it's even cheaper because it released for $30 on the PS4. The Switch version was $40. The physical does come with an audio CD, but still, it's just, oh man. It's so disappointing because it's a perfect game for the Switch. It's a game that should just thrive on the Switch, that I think would sell really well, but the performance issues really detract from the experience for me, and it just kind of takes you out of the game, and it's a shame because I think the core game is fantastic. If you absolutely want to play this game on the Switch, be my guest, but just know there are some performance issues that will hinder your experience, and yeah, hopefully they can fix it with a patch. But that's what I think about RiME. It definitely has a lot of potential. It's definitely a game I'm interested in and I want to play on other platforms, and hopefully they can fix the Nintendo Switch version, you know, fix these sort of little minor issues that really detract from the experience and make it a great game, because it's a game that deserves to be, you know, well done. It's a game that deserves a chance on the Switch, and these little things hold it back. So let me know in the comment section if you've played RiME before and what you thought about the game, and thank you for checking out this video. As always, if you're new here, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, leave me your thoughts in the comments down below, and I will catch you guys next time. Later.
RGT 85, RGT 85. RGT 85.